Before anyone gets overly concerned, I was tinkering with this gentleman yesterday as I really wasn't happy with the way the shocks were sitting in the rear. The front is fine because the front is essentially still a gatekeeper slash ecto front end. But this is a rear shock tower for using the trailing arms. If you can imagine, a chassis goes up like this, so these are mounted at that angle. When I wanted to get these shocks in place for a 4-link rear end, I flipped them around, and it was basically bodged together in such a way that the shock was running right there. So I had to space the shock way out to get it to fit. So what I did was just cut into a bunch of aluminum, and I figure if I'm going to make these little guys, I might as well put a ton of holes in them. And then the chassis brace here is welcomed but incidental, as I forgot to change the drill bit after I drilled the 3mm holes, and these were all supposed to be 2.5s. So it just kind of naturally worked out that that one hole is 3mm, as I made a cross brace for it, and it really, really does stiffen up the rear end. So as I was fabricating this, which takes more time than I would like to admit, I have a method that I use, and it's probably not the best or the fastest, but it does get me sort of a consistent result. And that got me to thinking, I could make something a little more substantial with my haphazard technique of bolting two pieces of aluminum together and then spending a ridiculous amount of time cutting out the shapes, angles, and contours. So that got me to thinking, who could benefit from, say, a new chassis? Like, let's try our hand at building an LCG chassis, having no idea what we're doing, gonna try to write down as little as possible, and make up as much as possible. And the unwilling participant, or victim, as it may or may not be, that popped into my head is Blue Sky High. For I feel like, as much as I really like this truck, for some reason it doesn't get driven as much as the others. It also doesn't hurt that Blue Sky High is very Spartan in his layout. You essentially have a motor transmission jobby up here in the front, a T-case in the middle, and then it just sends the power out to the axles. I've been thinking about trying to relocate the battery in the past, and then I just thought, well, let's just lower it down and see how that works. So there will be the logistical issues of this frame is pinched. It is narrower in the front than it is in the center, but not significantly so. I probably could just use spacers in the front, because the gearbox in the front, if memory serves, only has 2 mounting points. It's fast right there and right there. And as I'm running longer shocks, it comes with 80mm shocks, and I'm running 90s. I've had to resort to shock keys to do that. So I just got to thinking, if I lower the belly down 10mm or so, I won't have to run keys. I can just return the shocks to their original positions. And I'm probably just going to make a flat plate chassis and then try to put the bends in it to make the parts fit. This is not the sort of thing that I can do, I don't think, in one episode. So I think this is going to have to be parts. Step one will be to kind of 50% disassemble the rig so that I can pull a frame rail off, because I want to use the exact frame rail as a template to trace onto this piece of acrylic, which I found in my plastics bin, and it is pretty much exactly the length. Then this guy, some good old 6061, I'll table saw that in half into two pieces, transfer the marks over to here, and try to cut it out. I bought a new bandsaw blade and everything. So it will be interesting for me to see how I go about. I guess I'll just have to space the transfer case up, because this is essentially a rigid guy. When I was thinking about what rig to assault with this attempted modification, it didn't immediately click in my head that I think this might be the only rig in the fleet with a divorced transfer case. Yeah, let's take this halfway apart. Honestly, this had started to feel like a sort of inevitability. I was either going to build my own chassis and start from scratch, or I was going to end up doing something like this. And long story very short, it's just a lot cheaper to turn an existing rig LCG than it is to build one from scratch. So this is the guy. I've also really wanted to do suspension work on this one. Like, it seems to function well enough, but I don't know. There's something about it. I can't remember how much of this is like, I guess these are nutted on from the back. I have very little recollection of assembling this. Blue Sky High has not gotten let's call it a feature video in a good little while. Yeah, everything on this is nutted from the inside. Luckily, we only have to take one side off. But this will kind of be a preparation for the LCG, because pretty much everything is going to have to be nutted from the inside. I think that is the only mounting point for the gearbox on either side. I'm not doing work unless I'm cutting off zip ties. So I think I can get this apart. Boy, there are some very, very short screws holding this thing together. I think I can get this apart with minimal fuss. I realize now, of course, I don't need to remove the shock towers at all. Get this apart. Yeah, there's nothing longer than around a 10. There's quite a lot of 8s putting this thing together. Yeah, the gearbox is held on with an 8. There is the advantage of this thing being essentially simple. Couple of 10s. Should I be remembering what length goes where? Well, yeah. Am I? No. I'm just pulling them apart. This is going to get real flaily as soon as those upper links fall off. honestly know how much is actually left before this comes apart. Yeah, I am a power driver guy, for better or most likely for worse. What is that zip tie for? There's nothing in there. I just have a zip tie through a hole in the chassis. It's fine. Alright, what do we got? Oh, I see it now. Okay, so that one is not a nut. Yeah, so if possible, as I'm seeing here now, I would like to eliminate this. You can't see it at the moment, but there's a the rear chassis brace has like a little flat bit, and instead of being threaded, it has little captive nuts, and it is not one of my favorite kinds of things. So that means this screw is probably into the motor mount. So it's 4 screws to hold the motor mount on. Yes, yes. Oh, that's the antenna that's in there. All right. So there we have it. That's how long it takes to get half of this guy apart. Wow, I never really noticed how big those holes. Do those socket in? They do not. Yeah, those are just some really big holes. And unless I'm wrong, nope, this is a symmetrical chassis. There's no front and no back. Or more correctly, there's no left and no right. So either this frame rail and that frame rail are the exact same thing. The shocks are just mounted in a different set of holes in the rear than they are in the front. And the front and rear shock towers are the same tower, it looks like. Anyway, there is that. Let's actually, let's get the towers off. And then we can begin a quick trace. Like I think I say, I'm just going to reuse these towers for the moment. So however this rig is built, in the end, will incorporate detachable towers. I'm not going to build the towers in almost exclusively because the body mount is part of the shock tower, and they do have kind of a little unique profile there. But hopefully, by doing my dirty LCG conversion, I can get rid of the shock keys. That's most of what this is about, get rid of the shock keys. So I just have to pay close attention when I trace everything out to what holes the motor mount go into and what holes the shock towers go into. So I'm going to trace this up. Yeah, the amount of in curve is so tiny. It is about the width of the rail. So this thing is pretty close to just being flat rail. It might go in 6 millimeters, so 12 millimeters a pinch all the way around. And I mean, I guess no, it doesn't need to. It could be flat. But I don't really want to cut stuff up because that'll be too wide. And then, you know what? I'm going to dig through the bumper mounts and see if I have any bumper mounts that are just a skosh wider than that. And then maybe I can avoid having to try to pinch the aluminum ones. If the pinch was really big, I would say yes, let's do it. But man, that is so close to straight that's the kind of bend, and it's a compound bend. I have to bend and then bend again. That's the kind of bend that I could really mess up. So we'll see where that goes when I start tracing this out. So I got into the bins, and I don't have any TRX4 bumper mounts. TRX4 is slightly wider. I thought I would have been able to get the, like, this is a TRX4 rear chassis brace, and here's the MST chassis brace. So it's really only about 4 millimeters different. So it wouldn't have been nearly enough to make up the difference. So the width of element stuff is exactly the same. It's just the hole spacing will be different, but I'm making the pieces, so I'll just drill the holes there. I was just going to grab an element chassis brace. This is a little Yellow's old chassis brace. But this is the front brace from an element. And I looked at it for the first time and realized that I can just file that flat. Use this guy in the back in this sort of location and really simplify my battery mounting situation over the this whole conflagration. It already has plenty of front weight. I already know how low I can mount the battery. It really can't go any lower than that because at full compression the drive shaft is right up against the bottom of it. But I would like to get rid of all of this stuff. So I will be removing the rear bumper, not I guess rear bumper delete. I'll be getting rid of that. I will be getting rid of this bumper and either making or sorting out some other bumper, because the way this works is it's literally just bolted to this plate at the front of the chassis. I don't even know at this point if I will be retaining this plate, because what I had done is there are body mount holes in it. You can see them coming down here. I made this plate, bolted body mount holes, body posts to it, and just stuck this down, and then the motor's over the top, so it's impossible that it could fall out. But it's not, I think just these two little screws are the only thing retaining it. So it was kind of a clever approach, but it was different electronics when the thing was built. So, I did realize after looking a little more closely, these two little guys here are the reason the holes in the chassis are so big. I really don't think that's necessary. This thing has a lot of drop to it, so I'm going to figure something out. These are just 4 equidistantly spaced holes. It might be a matter of finding another center plate. That's a Capra, so that won't work. In one of these bins, there will be a chassis plate that I might be able to repurpose, because this one drops down quite a lot. If I could get it to drop down a little less, like this guy doesn't drop down nearly as much. Yeah, that's significantly less drop down. This guy drops down a lot. And I'm going to have to space it up anyway for the transfer case. So here we have essentially equidistantly spaced holes. I can use these 4, build a riser bracket, and hopefully bolt the transfer case to the bracket once I figure out how much chassis drop there's going to be. Because I had wanted to put some anti-squat into the drop 4 or 5 degrees downward, but I don't know if this guy will deflect at all. I mean, it seems like maybe it will deflect a little, but I don't know if I can get it to go down that far. There is also the option, which I was just considering now, of I gotta do something about they use conventional fasteners here. I gotta do something about how far that drop is, because with an LCG chassis, it's going to push everything down even more, and then this will be really low. And I don't want my decision as to how low it sits to be determined by how much drop there is in the chassis plate. That might I mean, it's definitely a consideration at this point, but I don't want it to be a design consideration in the end. So I'm going to try to push some of this stuff out of the way. Like I say, we learn together, and I am absolutely making this up as I go along because there's nothing to lose. I'm not going to cut any OE parts. So if the failure level approaches abject, I can just put this back on. It's not that many screws to do it. But we're going to figure it out. I'll get some of this stuff put away, and I'll get to tracing this out. And the transfer case is really going to be the decider. This is really what I'm working around here. I have haphazardly traced the OE frame rail, the profile on there. Let's get it up against here. So the line along here, that's just a trace of this frame rail. And then there's the amount I would like to drop it. I think it's 14 millimeters in the front and around 11 millimeters at the back. So it's not a drastic amount of dip. I've already adapted the holes in the front and the rear for the element body mounts and bumper eliminator piece. I have left the chassis line, the original chassis line, with the mounts for the sliders, because at the current rail position, the slider sits perfectly at the bottom of the chassis, and I don't know if when moving it, like there's not a lot, like the body can be lowered a tiny little bit, but I don't know if it can be lowered enough to where if this slider was dropped way down, it wouldn't just be way below the level of the body. Because the body mounts only have, we're looking at 2 holes in the front and 1 hole in the back. So they're pretty close to all the way down. So when I cut it, it's going to have that like a snake ate a 2x4 is basically what that's going to look like. And I've omitted all of the holes for the different wheelbases. It only needs 3 holes in the front, 2 holes in the rear. So because the wheelbase is not going to change, it's on the 313 wheelbase. I intend to use this body mostly forever. It has no cuts, no tears, no nothing. This is a pretty light rig. It has been very kind to its body. Oh, and a potential addition is I got a second set of these super deeps. As you can see, the adapter is actually past the back. And as Blue Sky High sits now, they are on those 12 millimeter widening adapters that use the special nut to hold them on. And I'm thinking that if I go back to a conventional hex and these, they will sit pretty close to the width that it's at now. I would just like to maintain the same width, and I might go to these. I might actually mount the growlers up on these with some different foams and try the growlers out on here. Kind of go for a similar amount of foam squish. These have been pretty good, but as I had mentioned in a previous video, they are starting to show a decent amount of knob wear, and I think there is a little bit of breakdown in the foams. So hopefully this will be enough of a change, but not too significant. And I think what I will do is at least get this finished out and get the pilot holes drilled. Everything will be 2.5 millimeter, and that'll probably do it for part 1 of this. But before I get into the actual fabrication proper, I'm not going to bother painting them or anything. They will be done and drilled out and mounted up. And the most complex part for me, I'm assuming, will be making the block to raise this up to keep that line. So we will see how that goes. You know, I'm making it both easier on myself and significantly more difficult on myself, because if there were no transfer case here, I could do whatever I want there in the center. So I'm going to get this cut out, and then we'll see what happens. It is considered an acceptably good day of cutting acrylic when this doesn't shoot any blobs of hot plastic into your eyes. That 6-tooth has seen a lot of cuts in its time. That's pretty much an acceptable cut on 1/4-inch acrylic for a blade of that age. This is the second most time-consuming portion of this process, as I traced a C channel, and we only need the width of what's inside the C channel. So basically, any marker line on the outside has to be removed. And you, and by you I mean me, you have to go very slowly, because this is the template upon which the aluminum will be cut. So the way I do this is, once this is finished out, I will probably drill the bumper mount holes, because I know that those will be 3mm. They don't need to be tapped for anything. I will drill those, and then I'll have the pieces of aluminum cut to transfer them to. We'll clamp it, drill through those, then bolt everything together so that I have it all together. And then, actually looking at it now, it's a very minimal amount of cuts that actually need to be made. I need to cut that out, I need to cut that out, and it's 17 holes. So this is not a particularly crazy amount of stuff I'm going with here. As I've said multiple times by now, the only issue here is a good old transfer case. Oh, and I don't exactly know where this guy is going to sit. So I am going to make cross braces out of aluminum to replace the piece that I hate. So basically, instead of using lock nuts on the insides of the shock towers, I will just have aluminum rod going straight across, or maybe aluminum bar. It depends on where my brain lands on how to get the battery in place. Obviously, I would like to default to this because it's got 4 nice equally spaced holes on it. I can just make a little plate with a kick up, slap a battery in it. I've had no real issues with the placement of the battery. This is roughly approximating the OE replacement. This is the OE piece, but as you can see, like most everything else, it's geared towards like a full-size pack, and I only run the little 1500 baby packs, which is why it's got this poorly bent piece of Kydex in a single strap. But I've never had a battery issue with this guy. So this guy will require, I mean, there's quite a bit of black still on there. Will require a good bit more on the old spindle sander. I haven't even gotten through the cut marks from the saw yet, so I know I still have a ways to go. And then I will punch these and drill them. And I don't know, we might even get up to the aluminum at this point. We'll see. I don't know where I'm going to split this into parts. It's just going to have to be split into parts. I don't want this to be like a 2-hour thing. So I'm going to sand the rest of this out, and then we'll get to drilling. I feel like I've got the rails, the eventual rails, down to an acceptable level of thinness. There's a little bit of marker line still remaining, but I don't want to take them down too much until we know what the fitment there is. So there'll be quite a bit of cleaning up when they're aluminum. I think we're in a pretty good place for this. I did measure the bigger holes. These are exactly 4 millimeters. So I am going to make note here of which ones need to be 4 millimeters, as I did discover that there are little lips. They're a little beat up, but they do click pretty well into the chassis, sort of. So I think this one sticks a little better. Yeah, it's not bad. So I will do 4 millimeter holes, and also it's the same story here. So I'm just going to stick with what they've got. So these lower holes will be 4 millimeter for the chassis plate. These will just be tapped. So these will be 2.5 so that I can just use real short flatheads to bolt the sliders on. And that works pretty simply. We get in the middle of the hole and this is one of my favorite dailies here. I love this guy. The automatic center punch is one of my favorite things. A quick moment to take a brief moment of silence. This guy, which was stolen off of a bike rack many years ago, and was used as the sort of quick release knob for my little ASMR machine over there, the spindle sander. And today, the hardened shaft on the spindle sander just pulled the threads out. And then I spent about 10 minutes trying to find a suitable replacement, never just jumping to the conclusion that it would be metric. It is indeed M8. So I did find an 8 millimeter bolt, but yeah, those, yep, that's the end of that poor little guy. And he's molded around the bolt. So, I mean, I don't know where I'm going to find, unless there's some more stolen bike rack parts. I don't know where I'm going to find a little 8 millimeter quick nut like that, but I'm going to punch the rest of these, and then we're going to go over there. The way I make a note to myself that they need to be 4 millimeters, I just write a lightning bolt looking 4 on there. We've got the drill press set up. A little 2.5 in here. We'll start from the ends, and so I don't know how much of this it's necessary to document. Also, bits really want to walk on this material. That one already walked a little bit. I probably should have double punched that. See if we get a little straighter this time. I realize that there's no way I can do this without blocking the camera. Yeah, that's a good bit better. Alright, so I don't stick my hand or head into the camera. I'm going to drill the rest of these. By this point, I'm feeling like I chose both wisely and poorly. There are not a whole lot of holes in a CFX, MST CFX chassis. I think I've omitted maybe 2 or 3 holes because they had the alternate. These are body mount holes. If you're using these body mounts for whatever body those fit, so I don't need those as I'm sticking with those body mounts. It doesn't really look spectacularly different from what comes with the vehicle. I don't think it's especially sexy, but it does at least seem functional. And I feel like at this point, it will be serviceable. It's just going to be about that adapter plate, which is going to be, I think it might be a little fidgety, unless I can find something to sand that bevel on, because what I'm going to have to do is it's going to have to have multiple holes in it, because it has to. It could be as simple as just making spacers and having the spacers at the front be longer than the spacers at the back. I will see how much deflection this will allow. I was digging through the drive shafts bin and thinking, well, maybe I can cobble something up. But unfortunately, this is one of the longer ones on an MST. I've seen ones where it looks basically like the 2 little snap rings are just touching each other. So, short of moving the transfer case, which is going to mess with the axles, I would think, the center drive shafts, I don't want to do that. I want this to be, as I've said, minimally invasive. So this is what I'm going with. Not the foxiest thing ever, and not super aggressive in the amount that it's moving it down. I kind of shot mentally for moving it down about the drop of the portal box, in some small effort to get this LCG, to get this rig to act like it has straight axles. If we can move the center down that much. Although, I mean, we're really not moving that much weight because the gearbox is mounted up here in the front. I don't know if it's going to do anything. I mean, but I don't have that much time into it yet, and this is how we find out. So I'm going to get to cutting that aluminum down, and that's going to be part 2. Methinks I would like to keep these similar in length. So that's where we're at right now. Part 2 will be about, this is just, I think this is just going to be 2 parts. Part 2 is going to be this, cutting and finishing the aluminum bits, because like I say, it's such a small amount of holes, and I build the sandwich, so I drill and cut both sides of the chassis at once, then unbolting this, figuring out how much the spacer has to rise it. In a perfect world, this would deflect enough, but I don't think it deflects at all. So I will have to raise that up, which means the center of gravity, I don't think it's going to move down a huge amount. I think the most interesting part is going to be to see if that kick angle on the chassis does what I hope it will do. So this guy will go back out at the end of part 2 as outfitted with the showdowns, and then I'm going to give it a try on the growlers. I don't think old Blue Sky High has ever tried the growlers, so I will give that a shot. But that's a little bit off. Still have to sort out some sort of bumper, because I'm definitely going with the element fronts and rears, and haven't gotten to finding out whether or not I'm going to have to bend those plates. I'm hoping I don't. It's not a huge amount of take-up. Can I just use bolts to pull them together? Oh, I got to manufacture these. Yeah, there's a decent amount of work, and that's why it's going to go into part 2. So if you've stuck with me through this far, thank you for watching part 1 of this. I hope you tune in for part 2 of this, and hopefully we get something out of it. Hopefully it makes it better and I don't have to just slap this back on. But if I do, it's not the end of the world. We're out about $2 in aluminum, and I've wasted my time and yours. But let's hope for the best. Once again, thank you for watching. Hope you tune in to see the rest of it.